Have you ever wondered if a man's actual feelings for you, his deepest heartfelt truth, might not be found in his words at all, but in something far more genuine and revealing? How he acts in bed. This idea may sound unusual, even bold, but it's rooted in one of the most respected psychological ideas of the last century. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who transformed our understanding of the mind, believed that love is not just a feeling, it's a force, unconscious, instinctual, that erupts in moments of vulnerability. In other words, the truth of how a man feels about you can't always be spoken aloud, but it can be seen, especially in the silent, exposed moments of intimacy. That's why today we're going to dive into 4 unconscious behaviors that, according to Jungian psychology, expose not just desire but devotion. These are not habits, they are true insights. And if you've ever found yourself asking, is this real or is it just sex? These signs will give you the clarity you deserve. Let's start with the first and perhaps most powerful sign: deep eye contact during intimacy. Now, at first glance, it might seem simple, obvious even, but what happens when a man can't stop looking at you during your most intimate moments? When his gaze lingers longer than expected, not out of lust, but out of something quieter, something unspoken. Jung called the eyes the windows to the soul, and that's not just a poetic metaphor. In the unconscious, the gaze is an involuntary transmission of truth. Words can lie, gestures can perform, but the eyes, they betray the self. A man in love may not even realize how long he's looking at you. He doesn't plan it. He doesn't practice it. He just does. And in that moment, he is not just looking at your body. He is revealing his own, his need for connection, his trust, his surrender. I used to believe prolonged eye contact during sex was just passion or ego, that it was about dominance or visual stimulation. But I'm not so sure anymore. When a man holds your gaze while he's vulnerable, skin to skin, it's not about what he sees. It's about being seen. He is saying, "This is me. I have nothing to hide from you." And that, whether he realizes it or not, is a radical act of love. But let's not romanticize too quickly. Not every intense stare is rooted in love, which is why this sign must be understood alongside what Jung called the anima, the inner feminine aspect of the male psyche. When a man's anima is awakened, it seeks not conquest, but communion. That's when his eye contact becomes less about possession and more about presence. It's subtle, it's unnerving, and it's unforgettable. But here's the emotional twist. When a man avoids your eyes during intimacy, what does that mean? Maybe he's distracted, maybe he's shy. But according to Jung, it could also mean something deeper, a guarded self, a part of him unwilling to be known. Avoidance of eye contact isn't just absence, it can be resistance. A fear of being seen too clearly, a sign that love, if it exists, still battles against the shadows of shame or trauma. That tension between connection and withdrawal is the emotional battlefield where real intimacy is either born or blocked. And yet when the gaze holds, when two people look without masks, there's a moment, just a flicker, when the world seems to disappear. Time slows, the ego dissolves, and in that quiet stare he may be telling you something he doesn't even have language for. You're not just a body to me. You're a mirror, a home, a soul I recognize as my own. And that realization, well, it's only the beginning. Because what happens next, when eye contact melts into action, when a man's focus shifts from what he wants to what you feel, tells us even more. But we'll get to that. What does it mean when a man in the most intimate of moments seems more concerned with your pleasure than his own? Not performatively, not as a tactic, but instinctively, with a quiet urgency that feels almost sacred. According to Jungian psychology, this isn't just kindness, It's an unconscious act of devotion. When a man loves deeply, he doesn't try to prioritize your pleasure. He can't help it. Something inside him, older than logic, deeper than desire, takes over. And this transformation is the second sign, selfless giving during intimacy. Jung spoke often of the sacred union, the alchemical merging of opposites, masculine and feminine, mind and body, self and other. In love, these forces don't just meet, they dissolve into one another. A man in lust seeks climax. A man in love seeks communion. He becomes tuned to you, your breath, your rhythm, your needs. He learns your pleasure not by asking, but by listening with his body, with his attention, with something like reverence. And in doing so, his pleasure becomes yours. There's a line he doesn't cross, the line between taking and offering. When a man is emotionally bonded, his instincts shift from consumption to contribution. You'll see this in the smallest details, the way he slows down when you need more time, the way he asks gently but sincerely, "Was that good for you?" Not out of insecurity, but because your joy completes the act. You'll feel it when he remembers what made you shiver last time and returns to it, not to impress, but to honor the connection you've built. He becomes less concerned with how he performs and more committed to how you feel. That shift from performance to presence is where love lives. And here's the emotional increase. This kind of giving isn't just about technique, it's a form of healing. A man who puts your pleasure first may be someone who has confronted his own shadows, shame, inadequacy, fear of being enough. Jung believed that intimacy reveals our repressed selves, our shadow archetypes that often remain hidden. When a man has faced those inner demons, when he's no longer driven by the need to prove himself, something beautiful happens. He gives not to earn love, but because he already feels it. But let's pause, because sometimes selfless behavior can be misunderstood. What if he's just good at sex? What if he's just well-trained? The answer lies in the tone beneath the action. Is it consistent or strategic? Does he mirror your emotions outside the bedroom, or does the giving end at climax? Love doesn't clock out when the lights go off. The real sign is in the effortless continuity of his attentiveness, not as a duty, but as a need to make sure you feel held, seen, celebrated. His body language, his tone, his timing, everything reveals one truth: you are sacred to him. There's something almost holy in that exchange. It's not just sensuality, it's spirituality. Jung described it as the integration of the masculine and feminine principles when the active pursuer surrenders to the receptive and both transform. This is not a man proving his worth. This is a man who has discovered yours, and through your pleasure, he remembers his own vulnerability, his own capacity to love without condition. But there's a loop we haven't closed yet, a tension still humming under the surface. Because what happens after the giving, when the act ends, when the breath slows and the room grows quiet, what does he do then? That is where the third sign reveals itself. And it may be the most emotionally raw of them all. It's easy to focus on what happens during sex, the fireworks, the passion, the surrender. But the real test of emotional connection often comes in the quiet moments after, when the bodies are still, when there's nothing left to prove, just two people bare in every sense of the word. And this brings us to the third sign: a man's post-intimacy openness and affection. Because what a man chooses to do after the climax says more about his heart than any whispered "I love you" in the heat of the moment. Carl Jung believed that our defenses, the masks we wear in public, the stories we tell ourselves, fall away most easily during vulnerability. Intimacy is a portal, not just into the body, but into the unconscious. And when a man is in love, His post-sex behavior reflects a kind of psychological truth serum. He might not even realize it, but in that afterglow, when the ego is still drowsy and the heart is wide open, he reveals everything. You'll see it in the way he holds you longer than necessary, not to trap, but to tether, as if your presence anchors him to something real. Or in the way he speaks softer, slower, sharing memories or thoughts he might never voice in daylight. He may trace his fingers over your skin absent-mindedly, like a ritual, like he's reminding himself you're there. Or he might rest his forehead against yours, breathing in sync, not saying a word, and yet communicating more than language ever could. These moments are not accidental. They are symptoms of deep psychological safety. Jung called this the integration phase, the coming together of light and shadow, masculine and feminine, ego and soul. A man who stays emotionally present after sex is not just giving affection. He is allowing himself to remain unguarded. That's rare, because for many men, especially those conditioned to equate masculinity with detachment, emotional closeness can feel threatening. So when he stays close instead of pulling away, when he lingers instead of retreating, when he shares instead of hiding, that's not just affection. That's defiance against old stories, against fear, against the need to perform. Here's where the emotional meaning rises. Some men vanish emotionally after sex, not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to stay. Their ego rebuilds quickly. They reassert distance. They armor up. And for a woman who longs for intimacy, that moment of separation can feel devastating, like being left in a room that was once filled with music. That's why a man who doesn't leave, physically or emotionally, is making a statement. He's not just present. He's choosing to stay even after the show is over. And yet, even in this closeness, there's a vulnerability that cuts deep. Because when a man loves you, staying after sex isn't just a gesture, it's a confession. He may tell you stories from childhood, reveal insecurities, admit fears. He may seem smaller, softer, and more human than ever. And that humanness, that's the evidence. He trusts you not only with his pleasure, but with his inner world. That's not seduction, that's surrender. I once thought emotional openness after sex was something to be earned, that a man only did that once he was ready or serious. But now I see it differently. It's not about time. It's about trust. And trust doesn't always announce itself with words. Sometimes it shows up in silence, in the way he reaches for you in the dark, or whispers something meaningless just to keep the connection alive. These aren't tactics, they're the unconscious rising to the surface, the soul whispering, "This is safe, I can stay here." But the body doesn't just speak through voice or touch. It has its own mysterious language, a rhythm, a timing, a choreography that we don't consciously control. And when love is true, that rhythm doesn't end with climax. It deepens. Which brings us to the final sign, and it's the most wordless of them all. There's a kind of intimacy that words can never capture, a silent current that flows between two bodies. When love is real, when connection runs deeper than reason, it's not loud, it's not planned, it just happens. And when it does, it's unforgettable. This final sign is perhaps the most invisible to the eye, and yet the most undeniable to the soul. Synchronized movement and unconscious mirroring. You don't plan to breathe at the same pace. You don't try to shift positions at the exact same time. You don't script your touches, your sighs, your moments of stillness. They simply align, as if your bodies have entered a shared rhythm, a dance neither of you rehearsed, but both of you instinctively know. Carl Jung called this phenomenon participation mystique, a primordial fusion where the boundaries between self and other begin to dissolve. When a man is emotionally bonded to you, his nervous system, yes, literally, begins to harmonize with yours. This is not poetry, It's biology. It's what scientists now call limbic synchrony. Your heart rates subtly syncing, your micro-movements reflecting one another, your energy matching without any conscious intent. But what's more revealing is not just the physical alignment, it's the emotional safety that allows it to unfold. Because mirroring doesn't happen when walls are up. It doesn't happen when trust is missing. It only emerges when the unconscious feels safe enough to let go of control and allow connection to flow through every cell. You'll notice it in the smallest moments. The way his hand finds your waist just as you start to roll closer. The way your breathing becomes a shared lullaby. The way silence between you doesn't feel like absence, but presence. A man who mirrors you unconsciously isn't copying, he's resonating. And that resonance is the deepest proof that he doesn't see you as other. He feels you as part of himself. Not in a possessive way, but in a sacred, rooted, returning to wholeness kind of way. Now here's where we step into the curiosity loop left open from the very beginning. Why do some loves feel like they've existed forever, even before the first touch? Why does a glance, a sigh, a stillness feel like recognition rather than discovery? Jung believed it's because when a man falls deeply in love, he's not just meeting you. He's meeting a reflection of his own feminine side, his inner feminine, and in that reflection everything feels familiar. That familiarity gives rise to an unspoken synchronization, not just in movement but in emotion, in thought, in breath. Your body becomes a memory he didn't know he had. Your presence evokes something ancient and inevitable. That's why you move together as if you've always known how. But there's a psychological reason this matters. Synchronization is not just sweet, it's revealing because it cannot be faked. Unlike romantic gestures or well-worded confessions, synchronized behavior is involuntary. It bypasses ego. It flows straight from the unconscious. And if his body matches yours, if his stillness rises when yours does, if his touch anticipates your need without you saying a word, it means something simple and staggering. He's not performing. He's present. And not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, somatically. All of him is with all of you. This is why casual encounters, no matter how skilled, rarely achieve this level of harmony. In those spaces, the body remains guarded. The nervous system is alert. Each person dances to their own rhythm, conscious of boundaries, cautious of exposure. But when love is present, those lines blur. The body stops performing. It starts remembering. That's the gift of mirroring. It's not about mimicry, it's about mutual surrender. It's the psyche saying, "This is safe. This is whole. This is home." And just like that, the four signs come together, not as checkboxes to measure, but as experiences to feel. Deep eye contact, selfless giving, emotional openness after, wordless mirroring. They don't shout, they don't demand. But when they're present, you'll feel them in your bones. Because his love won't just be said, it will be shown without him even knowing it. But now the question turns to you, because love is not just about recognizing signs. It's about listening to your intuition when those signs show up or don't. So before we end, there's one more layer to uncover, one more truth that Jung pointed to, one more reality we must face. Because at the core of all these signs, beneath the theories and the tenderness, lies a single truth. The body never lies about love. Carl Jung didn't just theorize love as an emotion, he saw it as a psychological event, a moment where the unconscious mind finds expression through instinct, touch, gaze, and surrender, and that's what makes these four signs so powerful. They are not gestures to impress. They are unconscious confessions. They speak not just of attraction, but of alignment. When a man holds your gaze through intimacy, when he puts your pleasure before his, when he opens up after the act with childlike honesty, and when his body moves in rhythm with yours without effort or plan, he is not just showing affection, he is showing integration. His inner and outer self are unified. His love is no longer an idea, it's become a state of being. But perhaps the most profound realization is this: if he doesn't show these signs, it doesn't mean he doesn't care. It means something else may be at play: emotional unavailability, fear, a disconnection from his feminine side. And that doesn't make him wrong or bad. It makes him human, still growing, still learning, still uncovering the map to his own inner world. That's why awareness is so vital. When you know what to look for, not in his words, but in his unconscious, you begin to see clearly where you truly stand. So now we turn the mirror toward you. Does your partner show these signs? Have you felt that quiet synchronicity, that effortless care, that post-intimacy softness that tells you, this isn't just desire, this is home? Or have you sensed the absence of these signs, and in that absence, begun to ask the questions your heart has long held silently? Share your experience. We want to hear your voice, because love, when examined with honesty and depth, becomes not just something we feel, but something we understand. And if this exploration moved something in you, if it lit a small fire of clarity or comfort, don't let it go out. Subscribe, like, stay with us. We're just beginning, because next we'll explore the other side of Jung's lens. The red flags, the hidden psychological warning signs that reveal when a connection may be surface level, wounding, or rooted in illusion. If you're curious to understand not just when love is real, but when it's dangerously incomplete, let us know. Until then, remember this: the unconscious always speaks. You just have to listen to the spaces between the words. That's where the truth lives. That's where love either blooms or quietly fades.